welcome into Office Hours. It's the 29th episode. What? It's just ridiculous. I don't know. Hey, Brent, how are
Who's
you?
counting anyways? Like
You.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think. I think you were keeping track.
Sure.
Feels like episode 80 if you ask me, but
I'm great, Chris. Thanks for letting me sleep in your office this week. It's been nice.
you know, Brent, when we sat down to create a podcast studio, no one said, "Hey, Chris, there's an airport nearby." But that would have been a great, it's like when you realize years later, like, man, that was a rough relationship. How come nobody ever warned me about that? That's what I feel like about the fact that the studio's been set up next to an airport. Like, nobody said, "Hey, man, I know you got this place, but..."
And yet you've stuck with this relationship for 10 years?
15, I think, something like that. Yeah. Well, I rethink it every time an airplane goes overhead, so it's not too often. It's not. I don't really dwell on it or anything. I'm not trying to start a show when an airplane's going over or anything. We're going to be a little glib this week. We're a little loopy because we're opening up the door to the Jupiter Broadcasting morgue. Ironically, we actually had a show named Morgue. We thought we would talk a little bit about the JB shows of past that have come and gone, why we ran them and why we killed them, and some thoughts around that process. And why not start, before we get to the death of our podcast and our long journey at Jupiter Broadcasting, what if we went back to about 18, 19 years ago from the very beginning at the All Things D, I think it was, the Big D conference by Walt Malzberg and Kara Swisher, where they had guest Steve Jobs, and he wanted to introduce them to this new thing called podcasting, and he did it live up on stage.
Adam Curry is one of the guys that invented podcasting, and he has a podcast called The Daily Source. Let me go ahead and subscribe to that, and we can go listen to his latest one. Just click on it.
I've actually had to restart the show 3 times. My Mac has been acting up like a mother. I don't know what's going on. I think it's something to do with the file system.
Okay.
Now, how do you control, say, dirty stuff?
Of course you would ask. Now, that was the world's introduction to podcasting in the iTunes store, and that's why I got the name Podcasting, because it was really initially focused at the iPod, and you could download them like you would your CD tracks, and you could sync them over to your iPod and listen on the go, and it just took off from there. And so when we first started doing our shows, like a lot of folks that didn't want to bother with the Apple ecosystem were just burning the podcast we were releasing to CDs.
Whoa.
And they would listen to the CDs in the car.
Are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God.
Yeah, and for a period of time, we even thought about offering CDs for sale of sets of the shows for people that would be in a little jewel case that would have a little album art on the jewel case, and you'd buy a CD and it would have 4 something shows or however many would fit on there.
I'm reacting quite violently, I think, to that idea. But when you think about how TV shows were released back then, it kind of seemed like a natural way to do it. So
yeah, and there was still bandwidth issues. Just about everybody at that time had a CD player, but nobody had an iPod or an MP3 player, and the MP3 player market was just a crapshoot. Crap devices, I mean, there was a couple gems in there that were awesome. But we were really kind of just trying to get it out any way we could, and the technology just didn't support it at the time. We were eager, though. And I kind of am grateful that we started as early as we did, because we got an opportunity to try a whole bunch of things that, looking back at it now, just seemed obvious, looking back from this vantage point. Well, that was never going to work. Of course that wasn't going to work. But at the time...
You don't know until you're in the middle of it, I guess.
Yeah, and so... Of course, most people know that we started with Linux Action Show is one of our first shows. There was Castablast and a few other things we tried, but Linux Action Show was our first big show that we tried. And once we had that kind of beachhead, we thought, well, let's see what else we can do. And we tried a series of things, and I thought we'd go through a few of them. We literally do not have the time to talk about all the shows that have come and gone on JB. We did a rough count of somewhere around 26 shows.
Yeah, and then you added 2 or 3 because they weren't actually listed in the places where we think they should be listed.
So somewhere around high 20s is how many shows have come and gone. I'm not talking about active shows.
Yeah, it's true, right?
We're just talking about shows that have come and gone. That's a lot of shows over the years. And for different reasons, we've tried different areas. So I thought, let's break it down by some of the categories that JB has tried over the years. And we took a few different stabs at culture stuff that's sort of geek adjacent, you might say. And one of the more well-known ones, but ones that I really enjoyed quite a bit, was our old show called Beer is Tasty.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Beer is Tasty. My name is Chris.
Brian?
That is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
Beer is Tasty. We're the show where we try a beer, we pair it with some food, and we tell you all about it. And now, if you haven't watched the last couple episodes of Beer is Tasty, we're doing something kind of fun. We went out, we got ourselves a big old 24-pack for $18 from Costco. And these are the Kirkland signature beers. They're Costco-labeled beers. Now, they're not made by Costco directly.
They're made by specifically Hopfen und Malz Brewing Company in San Jose, California.
Now, they don't agree. The internet doesn't say that's who makes it. Who says, what's the internet say, Jeremy? What is it?
Gordon Biersch.
Says,
So that was one of our more popular series, was the Kirkland Costco beer series, because of course people love to go to Costco and pick up a beer. Hadn't even considered it when we did it. And we tried a few other things like Bar is Tasty in that category. Women's Tech Radio. I tried a few other shows in that area, but one that I think is a long time listener favorite is the Faux Show. And so both Beer is Tasty and the Faux Show, they kind of suffered from the same issue long term. We loved both those shows a lot, and the Faux Show was special because in some ways it was sort of a spiritual successor to this. What we're doing is like a show for the community. Beer is Tasty was a show that was like a hangout with the community show, like, hey, you're not doing Linux now, let's talk beer. Both of them kind of we thought would be like adjacent to the main shows, but they never really picked up a lot of traction. But here's an example of the Faux Show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of The Faux Show. Today is Wednesday, July 25th. My name is Angela.
and my name is Chris.
And as most of you know, The Faux Show is not a real show. It is a social experience because I don't look at you. I look at the chat room, which I have here on my iPad.
Oh, good.
Wait, supported by an MSI Win running Linux.
Yeah, that's true. Holding it up. I have it full screen on my screen.
So we'd have the chat room embedded in the video stream of the show. So this was recorded in 2012. And that was pretty new. People didn't really put chat rooms embedded. I didn't know anybody that did it back then. And it was a pretty like rickety technical setup to make it work.
Right.
But it was nice because the whole show was for the community. So to be able to actually have the chat embedded in the video stream, I thought was a nice touch. And we kind of used that technique over various shows over the years.
It seems to me like you implemented all sorts of like technical gadgetry to, well, probably because you had a deep personal interest in it, but also it made the shows something unique. Like there's a bit of that feel sprinkled in at least the shows you've touched on so far. You know, the virtual backgrounds and stuff like that.
Yeah, one show where we tried something new technically, but didn't really work out was a show called Lotso. Have you ever heard of this one?
You know, I haven't even heard you talk about this one, so I don't know anything about it.
We really took a hard stab at gaming at JB. So a lot of like over the years that you've been here, you may have noticed people suggest, "Oh, you guys should do a gaming show. You should do a gaming show." Oh, child. Oh, child. We have done many gaming shows over the years, and at first we started too generalized. And this is where I think when we tried a stab at gaming, we realized specializing was going to be some part of the formula for us. But with Lotso, we had to learn that lesson first. And Lotso was a general gaming show. And the hosts, along with me, didn't actually want their faces on video. So I came up with a live silhouette system. So we would be silhouettes on the stream. It was live versions of us.
That's cool.
But we were silhouetted out. And we would do things like talk about recent game releases or go to gaming conventions. Like here's an example of an episode from looks like 2010. So we're going back to 2010 now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Legend of the Stoned Owl. We like to call it Lotso. And my name is Chris.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Alan.
All right, we are excited about tonight, you guys, because it is our PAX Roundup. Last weekend, We attacked PAX. I mean, seriously, we got all up in there. All of us went down with cameras, all kinds of stuff. We went nuts.
Attacked it in the face.
Now the audio sucked back then. The audio really sucked back then. EQ was hard. Minimac, I saw you had a question go by, and I wanted to let you jump in before we keep going on. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember I listened to the folk show. When did you stop it? Because it gives me an indication from when on I started listening to Jupiter Broadcasting.
Was it 4 years after it started?
I don't know. I can't quite remember. I don't know if we officially ended it, but then when the Linux Academy acquisition came along, it might have kind of just been.
No, it wasn't going.
Right. Nope. I don't know if we'd officially ended it. I don't know. I honestly.
I'm looking at it.
I recall that it was that one was a hard one because it was really, it was a show for the community and they enjoyed it. We were both, parents. We were doing it in the evening and, we get a couple thousand downloads or maybe, it's a tough call on those types of shows.
So in the chat, they say that you stopped like around 2015.
Oh, that's pretty good. I've got October 30, 2015 is the final episode, 227th episode.
Yeah, right on.
So I started probably listening to Jupiter Broadcasting like 2014. Yeah.
Nice.
Long time ago.
Yeah, it is. Yep. Yeah, Lotso was. Lotso was probably dead by then, right?
If I hear your voice now, it's so strange.
Yeah.
You sound completely different now.
Well, that's true.
You
sound like a young boy.
Young boy. Yeah.
Your ability, Chris, to track history is not great.
No.
And we know that about you, and we love you for it.
Well, all this, I don't. The previous stuff, I don't care about any of it really. I mean, because it's my old Chris stuff. I don't like what old Chris does.
Yeah, it's a long time ago, but Lotso, last episode, August 15, 2011.
All right. Then we kind of from there, we specialized a bit. We did Stoked, which was our Star Trek online podcast. That was a blast.
I want you to really dig into this one because
really?
Almost every time I'm here, it comes up at some point. But also, we've been watching a lot of Star Trek this visit, at least for me being here this last week.
Yeah, with Picard and the Enterprise F getting a little showcase. I think it's been on our mind just because that whole journey of designing that starship was covered in Stoked, and so it was kind of a fun thing to go back like 10 years and be like, here's when the community member originally created this Enterprise, and now it's on the TV shows. It was a huge production. I guess I would just say people should go check it out if they're curious at all. I wouldn't bother, but
what was the premise of Stoked?
We got a really early start on following the Star Trek online video game. 6 months before it even came out, we got kind of an exclusive access to it just because of being at a game event. And so we tracked this game, and it was a dramatic following because the game had died, then it had been rescued, and then kind of a rug pull because the entire engine got changed out. But then people were still happy to have a Star Trek game, and the story of this plucky little gaming shop that ended up having a success and then got bought and then went through that change and just covered all of that. Plus, my co-host got hired by the damn game company because he was so good at the game.
That's hilarious.
He's still working there. All of that, learning how to do that's one where we really went all in on video production too. And it was a lot of fun to do that. But ultimately with a lot of these gaming shows, they are really specific to an audience. And that show could only ever be as big as the game could be. And that was a hard limit. And that was even if you got, a good percentage of the gamer base to watch the show.
But I guess given that limit, it sounds like from what we were exploring last night, you were telling me all sorts of stories, that it was a deeply tight-knit community and drove some of the JB forums to evolve because of it.
A lot of these shows involve a long struggle of deciding when it is time to end them. I'm thinking that's what's really sticking out with me right now is, God, it was hard to decide to kill that show. But obviously looking back at it, so necessary because every show takes time, energy, stress, focus, dedication, grit. Right, like every week, it's just to do it every week. It's a relationship. It's like being in a relationship. It requires constant work all the time, and you're really the more relationships you take on, the more you're spread out, right? And that is doing podcast as well.
Not to mention, most of these were video produced shows, and I think Stoked in particular, you did some really cool.
Spent a lot of time. We'd spend all day Saturday until the evening, recording, streaming, editing. And then I would get up Sunday and spend all day Sunday doing the same thing for Linux Action Show. And so that Saturday was from the crack of dawn till after sunset. And so was Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, Saturday, Sunday, every week. 2 big, huge shows, Linux Action Show and Stoked. And we draw huge audiences for the live stream, 2,000-3,000 people for the live stream. It was huge. So it was rewarding in that sense. It was like, wow, we seem to be hitting some success here, but it became just untenable after. It was like 127 episodes for Stoked and, many more for Linux Action Show. But then we kind of realized, well, we could focus it on quality and we could focus in on execution a bit more if we did audio. And the audio seems to be doing a little bit better. So there were trial balloons into audio as well. And one of the shows that I wanted to try, for whatever reason forever, is I wanted to do a daily show. And Tech Talk Today seemed like the opportunity to do that. So usually Tech Talk Today would be myself and a co-host, and we'd be just discussing the tech news of the week or of the day, depending on the era of Tech Talks. We tried both. And I tried in that episode to really embrace the audio format. And I'll play a sample of episode 263. It looks like it went on to archive.org in 2018. And this is the episode in 2018. I remember this moment. I had a real aha moment. Now, this is a bit ago now, but I had a real aha moment that Amazon was about to just take over everything and they were going to explode. And it was their acquisition of Ring Doorbell that really made me put it all together. And so that's what this episode of Tech Talk Today was about.
This is Tech Talk Today, episode 263.
Who's there? It's Jamie. Here to pitch? Who? It's Jamie.
Come in.
Sharks. Wouldn't it have been nice to know who was behind the door before you let me in? With my product, you can. My name is Jamie Siminoff. I'm from Los Angeles, California. My product is the Doorbot. I'm seeking $700,000 for a 10% stake in the company. Consumers are currently spending billions of dollars.
In November of 2013, an entrepreneur named Jamie pitched his idea for a smart doorbell on the reality show Shark Tank. But every judge turned him down.
I'm out.
I'm out. I'm out. I just don't think it's for me. I'm out.
Jamie forged ahead with the concept, and news broke this week that Amazon is buying his company Ring for over $1 billion.
Amazon has agreed to buy Ring, a California-based smart home company that makes video cameras, doorbells, and other security tech. The deal is valued at about $1 billion and helps push Amazon further into the smart home market.
And why would Amazon want a video doorbell, besides the obvious of getting into home delivery? It's all about going deeper into our homes. Don't think about what Ring is selling today. Think about what they're going to be selling tomorrow.
But big picture-wise, what people don't realize is the next set of products coming out of Ring. And those products are going to be alarms.
That's Jason Calacanis.
So they're going to take the cameras and the alarms and put it together. And the big loser in this will be ADT and those kind of folks who people hate, and to charge thousands of dollars to set up a system and then charge you for a 4-year contract at $100 a month. People absolutely hate that company. And now there's new products that are coming out where there's nothing down, $20, $30 a month for the service to let the alarm company know, and you can install it yourself. So.
But it's not just home security or package delivery. It's clear that Amazon wants to own our homes.
In this particular case, it's clear that Amazon wants to own the home.
That's Eric Capu.
And they want to own the home so that not only do you have all the security and the smart home features, but that it's so easy for you to order anything you need, and then it's delivered right into your home. So it's a closed loop. It's a beautiful strategy.
Yeah, ADT's down almost 6%.
And the experts who used to go on about how Amazon never earns a profit, well, that's changed.
Let's get to the revenue, $60.5 billion. That is a beat.
And that was just last quarter. The Amazon machinery is geared up and ready to win 2018. And Amazon is in a stronger position than they've ever been.
And quite frankly, I think this is part of the reason that they're going to open this HQ2 and hire another 50,000 employees. Is because at the end of the day, their goal is world domination.
I've always loved kind of putting together episodes where you can use a bunch of different audio for that sort of stuff. So that's what I enjoyed, like going a little more general tech, just because I could pull in all those different things and tell a complete story about, from here to there. But there are so many people doing tech news coverage that is just not something people needed from Jupiter Broadcasting.
Right.
And I didn't need to be spending that much time doing a show that people didn't need something for. I wanted Tech Talk Today to work out. I stuck with it for quite a while. We did a couple of different iterations of it too to see if they'd be successful. But it just wasn't in the wheelhouse of topics that people wanted to hear from JB. And as a podcaster, it's like, oh, but this is really what I want to do. This is so hard. This is where direction I want to go. And everybody's like, yeah, good job. But it's not really for me. And you could get really upset about it. You could be like, well, what is it they do want? And try to think about that and be like, okay, what have I missed here? Right.
So how do you decide whether that's a factor of just that show or that it's because of the audience that you've built up, with the current list of shows and you're trying something new and you just, how do you know how long to give a show to get to the point?
I think the way I would reframe the question to be, what is worth spending your time on? And could you maybe grind out Tech Talk Today for 1,000 episodes and build a whole new audience? Maybe. But then you're also competing against 1,000 other general tech podcasts.
So you're saying pick a niche that you love and that works well and that you can
actually commit to.
Yeah.
And then, stick to it. But I think that makes it sound simpler than it is because you kind of have to discover a little bit. Like we tried, TechSnap was pretty well received for a while, but even there, it was sort of like a really general tech show. It kind of got a little long and started like drop off started happening in the later parts. Now, with that one too, there is just kind of a natural end to a show after like 300 episodes or whatever it might be for a particular show. So it sort of depends. But for Tech Talk, this isn't the right market fit. Plan B is another example where Plan B was a Bitcoin podcast 10 years ago, 11 years ago, talking about Bitcoin and security issues and scammers and all that kind of stuff, which also has one of my favorite intros. Maybe I should play it because I really like the intro to Plan B. I thought it kind of matched up perfectly with a show about Bitcoin and was an opportunity to kind of do like an audio video hybrid kind of style.
Episode 16 for July 23rd, 2013. And welcome to Plan B, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show contemplating the future and present of Bitcoin with insights for the novice, shop talk for the expert, and opinionated discussion for the interested observer of Bitcoin and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining me every single week is my co-host, Drew.
Well, hello, Drew.
Hey, how's it going, man? That's the craziest intro I think we've ever done. That's good, though. I didn't think you had it in you because it's so warm where you're at.
Yeah, and I'm pretty tired, so just carry me on through the show. We'll be fine.
Well, I'll tell you, it is getting a little warm over here, too. In fact, my wife and I have dubbed my recording room as the fish tank because the steam comes in from the grass into my office and makes everything wet and damp in here. So if something zaps out, it's because it got a little too moist.
That doesn't sound good at all. I don't remember that, but that sounds awful. In a way, I kind of wish I hadn't killed Plan B because wouldn't it be something to be doing a Bitcoin podcast now? So we're watching the video version in studio of this, and I had a price ticker on the video.
That's fun.
One Bitcoin was $94.80 when we recorded this episode of Plan B back in 2013.
Well, you should say what it currently is so 10 years from now when you're listening to this episode.
Good point. Right now it's worth $27,612. Somewhere around, it's been nipping $30,000 for the last couple of weeks. Pretty wild to watch that and to watch that transformation. So some part of me wishes I could have stuck with it.
How did you decide for Plan B specifically that it wasn't working, or was it working for a while?
Yeah, actually, it was. This is a good lesson. I think this is one of the harder ones too. Is, if Plan B hadn't died, I never would have started Linux Unplugged. So the next Tuesday that we paused Plan B, I started Linux Unplugged, and I never went back. So
But how did you decide to even make that transition? Like, how did you know that was the moment that, had to change?
It didn't. So my co-host needed to like go finish up school for a bit and travel, and so we were gonna take like a 2 or 3 month break. And so I thought, well, I have all these emails for the Linux Action Show that I need to read, so I'll just get on air, hang out with the community. I think we tried Google Hangouts the first time, or something Google Circles, Google Plus related, whatever, and then just read emails. And then that became Linux Unplugged, and it's been going every week since Plan B ended. Just tick-tock, like a clock. And I think what it shows you is there's an opportunity cost to each one of these shows. Each show has an opportunity cost. We couldn't have our biggest show if I had kept doing Plan B. Now, would Plan B have turned into a ginormous show? Yes, but it probably also would have changed the entire trajectory of this network, right? It's funny because podcasters that have been doing Bitcoin podcasts for a few years now are considered like OG long timers.
Right.
And I'm like,
Right.
oh.
Well, didn't someone like steal the artwork and call their thing
Yeah,
Plan
there's a
B?
social media influencer that took the artwork and calls themselves Plan B now too. There is that. But with the death of Plan B came, Linux Unplugged, which is still going to this day and has been a
Plan C.
Yeah. We had a bunch. I mean, there's so many shows I'm not mentioning, like SciByte and all those. But I thought How to Linux might be worth talking before we wrap this segment up, because I felt like How to Linux was one of our later iterations of a shot in the dark that we tried, where we realized we need to be focusing on Linux. So what could we do in Linux that would be a worthy video show? What if we wanted to make something purpose-built for video that was Linux-focused? And I'm going to put a link to this in the show notes, because I'd like to know the listener's opinion on How to Linux, on how it holds up. I wonder if it holds up or not, if we were onto something or not. We only gave it 4 episodes.
4?
It was a massive. We were shooting on location and in studio, and we were doing entire how-tos that were incredibly hard to work through and then figure out a way to shoot them and make them simplified. And then you got to shoot that visually. You got to shoot
a week of pre-production for each episode.
So we committed to doing a batch of them, and we'd see how the audience response was. Ironically, the audience response at the time, pretty lukewarm. And that's why one of the reasons we decided not to do it. However, preparing for this episode, looking back at it, episode 1 now has 113,000 views on YouTube. And episode 2 has 40,000 views or 30,000 views or something like that. So it seems like that this show oddly has found an audience years later, which I thought was funny. This is a visual show, but I think the audio will work. We do have a copy of the visual on YouTube linked in the notes, though, for the podcast audience that wants to check it out. But I think it still works. You'll get a general sense of the vibe without the sweet pan of downtown Seattle, which already looks old and retro.
Technology like our world is ever changing. Once was closed off by big billion-dollar corporations, have now been opened up by awesome communities and the price of free. For 15 years plus, I've been involved in technology, administrating systems from Windows to OS X. But now I've heard of something new, something awesome, something open, and something free, and it's called Linux. My name is Chase Nunes, and I'm switching to Linux.
This episode of How to Linux is brought to you by Linux Academy. Go to linuxacademy.com/howto and participate in the Summer of Learning. Get a 33% discount for the next 3 months. What is Linux Academy? It is the place you can go at
So you can see this one, we're a little more on theme, right? So we've got the Ronald Jenkins music. It's Linux focused. We've got the Linux Academy sponsor and a how-to podcast. Makes a lot of sense. It's starting to make a little more sense. You can start to see how the lessons are starting to come together.
You're starting to focus, sharpen the pencil, and realize what works.
Yeah, and apparently this did work. Looking at it in retrospect to a degree, I even like the graphics package still. I actually think the graphics package we use for the show still kind of holds up all these years later. And here's Chase driving.
Making the jump to Linux. And first, there are many different flavors of it, right? There's Ubuntu, there's Arch, there's these other ones I haven't even heard of. So I got to figure out what I'm going to pick. There is somebody I can call on. There's somebody that I know that can really help me. And I'm going to head there now. I think he's going to be the one to help.
Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey Chase.
Hey Chris. By the way,
This is Chris Fisher. He
Hey, guys.
is the host of the world's largest Linux podcast.
No, brother, don't stop it right there. Jeez. But so we had this thing where I was like the Linux doctor, and he had these problems. And legitimately, one of his original issues when switching was there's so many damn distros. Like, I don't want to switch to Linux because I don't want to make the wrong choice. And so we thought, all right, that'll be episode 1. How do you pick a distro?
I think we're still asking that question.
Yeah, definitely still are asking that question. No doubt about it. And so it was kind of like, all right, so this worked, but video seemingly wasn't gaining traction. I don't know. And then through that, and of course, the sunsetting of Linux Action Show, we kind of now have landed on the lineup that we have today, the format we have today. And of course, we're looking at a whole nother set of changes for 2023, where a lot of more hard decisions are going to have to be made. That mostly, though, is just due to the advertising market collapsing.
Is that a set of decisions that are quite a bit different than some of these other shows?
No, not really. I mean, I don't feel like it. I feel like it's a lot of the same, like, oh, we could kill this show, but people really like it. It does. I mean, the thing that's harder this time is all the shows do pretty well, which is a good problem, right? But in the past, you could look at the numbers and go, well, this one's clearly not performing. So that's the obvious one to kill. But we've never only killed just on numbers. We never really have gone in there and just axed it because it's not doing great. We always take in like community engagement and other potential stuff like that. So it's always been really hard. And then afterwards, after like a year or so, it's always like, oh, that was so obvious. And then like the first few months, it's really rough. People, because everybody comes out of the woodwork, listens to that show. And I always feel really guilty because I remember when Voyager ended and it crushed me. So, there's that. But there's such a unique and horrible back catalog that is slowly but surely getting worked at. So we may have updates on how you could get to some of this stuff, but we do have some links in the show notes for some of the things that we played today and others that we didn't get a chance to play. So if you do want to check out some of the old crap for some reason, I don't recommend it, but you can. Linode.com/Jupiter. Head on over to Linode right now. Hey, Brent, see how fast you can get it to Linode.com/Jupiter. Because, when you go there, you get $100 in 60-day credit on a new account. And it's a great way to try out Linode. And they are growing like crazy because they're now part of Akamai. And Akamai has got the resources, of course, all the things we like the tooling, the UI, the API, the CLI, all that is staying the same. They're just going to help make it better and bigger, give them more resources, expand the data center reach, and of course, offer us more cool plans as well. I think that's in the works. They have this concept, which I imagine we'll be talking about more soon, about these micro Linode data centers. So they got like plans for another dozen data centers this year, but then for areas that they don't have like an official data center, they're working on this micro data center standard where you can stand up like a little data center instance. I don't know. It sounds really cool. You combine that with all the documentation, the fantastic support, and the $100 credit, and it's a way to support the network. Why not go to linode.com/Jupiter right now and experience the power of Linode, now Akamai. It's linode.com/Jupiter, and go learn how Linode, now Akamai, can help scale your applications from the cloud all the way to the edge. And I'm talking like way out there, like even Brent's house.
Hey, now.
You could do it. Linode.com/Jupiter.
Well, I think I want to do, an honorable mention or two.
All right.
I hear these two shows mentioned quite a bit at our meetups, and I got to agree.
Okay.
Choose Linux comes up quite often as like very listener loved as a show.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for good reason. I think there was some cool explorations on there. You mentioned, choosing a distro and stuff like that, and that was a great show that explored it.
Yeah.
Both for beginners and folks who just want to stay up to date with things. So,
indeed, that was an unceremonious end to choose Linux. Unfortunately, it was just a business thing that the people that owned us at the time decided.
So sad.
Yeah. What's the other one?
I think the other one that sticks out for me is User Error.
Oh yeah,
it was like a show like no other, and
great music.
Yeah, and
love the end song on User Error. Love that indie music.
And we just hilarious, like hanging out with your friends kind of show. And I think that's really hard to pull off, but somehow the combination between the hosts that just really, they worked.
That's another show that never performed the way we hoped it would.
Yeah, I think maybe they're longtime JB listeners will know what I mean. Sometimes there are shows that, a huge swath of people can really learn something from and enjoy. And sometimes it's just like the super fan shows. I mean, maybe Office Hours is one of those where, it'll only get so many numbers, but the people who listen are diehard fans. So,
yeah. And then it comes down to, do we have the time and energy concentration to spare? And when we do, and when we can, we will, keep it on the air, even if it doesn't get the biggest numbers.
One last one. It's Friday.
Oh, the Friday stream. One of my favorites. I had so much fun. That was really a highlight for me. Getting the whole team together, or as many of the team members as we could on a Friday, everybody was around, and sitting down and doing a stream and talking about whatever, doing crazy antics.
See, that was like a show just for the folks that worked in JB.
And, it was like a team building thing, really.
The fact, and it was, I tried to go listen to some of the introductions to some of the shows we're going to talk about today, just to get reminded. And I loved how with that show, it's just different every single week.
Oh, yeah, it was.
Totally like some great choices by Cheese on song suggestions and stuff. I feel like I'm not doing the network justice and choosing songs, but, maybe I can learn a thing or two from Cheese.
You got to just get a back channel going to Cheese. Another show that we did different intros, a couple of shows, but one that comes to mind is Jupiter at Night, because for a period of time, my co-host Jeremy would sing the intros.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, he'd sing them. And I wonder if we could find it.
That's great.
And he has a pretty good singing voice.
Wow.
Yeah,
I'm impressed.
And so that was another, it doesn't really come up. These things are so old now, they're even hard to find. Like, they're just basically falling off the internet. If you go to archive.org, you can usually find them. But geez, that's arduous. But and also there's another show we did called Joint Failures, where my buddy John and I would do a different intro every time. What was I going to look up? Oh, Jupiter at Night. I wonder if we could find a version of Jeremy belting it. You think?
I'm looking in our super secret archive here. And
yeah.
I guess the last episode was titled Needs More Cowbell. So I think you get a sense of what it...
Probably. Well, let's get into the boost.
Damn straight, y'all.
And Marcel comes in as our booster. Our baller booster is this week with 20,000 sats. JB has the best sponsors. Thanks for keeping it on theme. I just heard an ad for a factory TV dinner and a Linux sysadmin podcast. I know the sponsor scene is pretty bleak right now. I'm hoping my boost and Jupiter.party subscription help you say no a little more often. Thank you, Marcel.
That's very kind.
Appreciate that. It's a small business, and I do estimate we're going to have about probably half the ad load that we have today, in probably at the end of the quarter or at the beginning of H2, depending on when the contracts for different sponsors end. And that means 50% cut in sponsor revenue, which is our largest source of funding. So we will be seemingly pausing one or more shows that we can figure out and kind of move things around to keep going. And then the shows that remain will be the shows that get the most boosts and membership, just because there is a base cost to running them and base cost to just keeping the business going. And then if we can get that covered, I will live a lean life. I mean, I already do. So it's going to be a rough year for me, and it's probably going to have many years of consequences. But my thought is we'll keep it lean and mean, keep the stuff that we can going. And then when things turn around, we bring back those shows and whatnot. And maybe not all of them come back. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. We'll just see how the market recovers, maybe early next year, if we're lucky. Linux Teamster comes in with 5,000 sats, who also sent me some great ESP gadget tips.
Ooh.
He said he loved having Michael on and hope he comes back soon. I agree. It's always nice to check in with old friends and see what they're up to and chat with them and get another podcaster's perspective. Speaking of another podcaster, Mere Mortals podcast comes in, which we were listening to on the drive down today, with a adorable row of ducks, our first row of ducks that I'm at least playing a sound effect for. And they write, "Oh no, I started my podcast in 2019, 2020, and 2021. I'm right in the multi-danger zone. The danger zone.
Danger."
Yeah, we were talking about how podcasts that launched in those years seem to be fading at a high rate. But you've been in podcasting for a while. Can you tell which ones will last 10 plus years when they're less than a few years old?
That's such a great question.
Yeah, we were talking about this last night, and this question. And I think what was my answer? My answer is I couldn't tell you which ones are going to last, but I can definitely tell you which ones aren't.
Yeah, right. Well, that's maybe, I don't know, 70% of them.
Yeah. I can listen to, this thing. No. And it's so obvious too. Like, I can listen to a podcast. I can tell you nobody's going to listen to it too.
Well, okay. Can you distill that into like, I don't know, 2-3 factors that are guaranteed misses or?
Disclosure.
Okay.
I really suck at this. I struggles to learn something. I learn it, I internalize it, and then I cannot really even identify the fact that I do it. But if I were to think about it, I would think, how cohesive the hosts are, the energy level, how prepared everybody seems, and the amount of energy they were willing to put into the show before time. You can tell when one host is under-prepped and one host is over-prepped. That mismatch and dynamic will cause resentment between the hosts and cause things to fall apart. If one host is putting all the work in and the other host is just sort of dragging their ass and showing up, inevitably, unless there's some sort of prearrangement or structure, inevitably that causes conflict. You could also just kind of tell, like, if they're not putting the effort into the quality, if they're not really thinking about the show very much or thinking deeply about it, those types of things.
I've noticed as well, sometimes, they got great ideas for the first 3-5 episodes, and then you're listening to episode 10 and it's like, wait, there's no topic here.
And then sometimes, what I think, if you've ever wondered, why do all these podcasters have so many podcasts? Like, do you know any professional full-time podcaster that doesn't have multiple podcasts? I know
Rogan.
I know them, and sure, Rogan, yeah. But Rogan kind of doesn't count because he also does the fight stuff and he does like the Netflix comedy stuff. So he's doing a lot of stuff, right, for income. But somebody who just does full-time podcasting, they inevitably launch multiple podcasts. They inevitably grow horizontally. So why is that?
I would guess it's because of revenue. The more shows equals more dollar.
More ad inventory. So you can only have so many ads in a podcast. Like this one could probably have one more. We have one ad. I didn't want to overdo it. This one has one ad because it's a show for the community. And the reality is, you can really fit 2, maybe 3 ads in an hour-long podcast before it gets really obnoxious, and you better do it right.
Then it becomes YouTube, right?
Right. So at that point, you got to have more podcasts because you could still have sponsors knocking on your door, or you could have, maybe you're good at selling. You need more inventory. Well, the only way to get more inventory is to scale out horizontally and have more podcasts. But then you have all these new relationships, and they're all requiring your energy and your time and your thought. And, like when you have 3, 4, 5 shows, you're never able to spend an entire week thinking about the next episode. But that's the audience expectation. If you only listen to Office Hours or Linux Unplugged, your expectation is that we're all in on that show, and that's what we're thinking about and working on all the time. And so that's the pressure we feel. So that's what we try to deliver. But the reality is each show gets that level of attention, and it's not sustainable by a human long term. The podcasts scale out to make money, and then they kind of become this massive weight of production. Then you have to scale up the team to help support these shows you have running, which then increase your costs, which then means you need more sponsors, which means you need more ad inventory. And what you ultimately get in this model is the mainstream media. That's where you end up.
I don't like it.
Right. So that's why I'm not really interested in running. What did Marcel call them?
I think it was toothpaste or...
Yeah, it was something like, like some sort of factory toothpaste delivery or TV dinners or something. Like, I'm not interested in toothpaste delivery commercials or anything like that, right? Like,
could you imagine getting up nice and early before a show, showing up at the studio and...
Yeah, could you spend 18 years building something, right? Making your own career, building your own business just so you could come in there and sell toothpaste. How would you feel about that? It's not good. It doesn't feel good. So
it's minty fresh.
Well, maybe it's good toothpaste. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess the question I have is like, okay, so many podcasts this year are at the mercy of, just less advertising. So we'll see necessarily some of them vanish, whether by choice or not.
Could be a good year for value adoption. Seems like we're going to be testing a lot of these ideas we've been talking about.
We also don't know how long this sponsored drought will last. So,
and you have to imagine too, like the audience is probably feeling pretty tight because things are feeling tight for me these days.
Of course.
And so even though the sponsor market's collapsed, but we don't really know where they, how much support we can get from the audience yet. So that's kind of what's going to scale it, not sponsors. And then if the sponsor market improves, what I would love to do is build back where like the sponsor revenue is like 30%, not 70%. Right. So we just build a replacement for that sponsor revenue. So when the market recovers, then we engage with sponsors. Maybe some sponsored episodes, like a sponsor like Linode is such a great fit. It just seems obvious, right? Like, so some sponsors like Tailscale, some sponsorships just make sense. But maybe other sponsorships might make sense more for like sponsoring an event or a trip that we go on or Linux Fest, right? Something that is, we work with them on a set project for a period of time. Then we move on, and it's not like they're in the show all the time or something. Like there could be something there too, where because costs and payroll are being covered by value for value from the audience, we bring that in, and it's like, okay, this pays for these upgrades, or this pays for that trip, or something like that. And it's kind of a different relationship with sponsors, not as directly impacted on content and things like that. Or maybe and with a mix of something else. I don't know. I think it will be a hybrid model, but I would like to turn the dial down on the sponsorship stuff. And if going through basically a drought or a famine for this year and early next year is the way there, if I'm doing this for the next 15, 20 years, I guess I'll take that.
It's the long game.
I'm playing the long game. Yeah.
Well, at what point is JB going to sell like the JB yacht and that condo we have in Tokyo?
Right. We have all this property. We'll just sell off these. Don't forget all those office spaces that we set up with microphones and with sound insulation. We've never used them. I've never even been there, but
we might have.
Seemed like might need it.
Yeah.
And I wanted to buy it while the prices were high. So, we'll just sell those and be fine. Yelp Derp comes in. I don't know. Didn't get that right at all. But you know what? It's a hot boost with 6,000 sats.
Coming in hot with the boost.
And they're using Fountain. First time boosting. I've been using Fountain for a while now, switching to Podverse to give that a try. So I'm emptying out my Fountain earned sats. Been loving many of your shows, and I've giving back. Thanks for the hard work. Well, thank you. This is something we get from time to time when people move podcast apps. And I mention it is a Lightning network. It is an open network. You could send the sats from Fountain to Podverse. I'm also not going to say no to your sats. And I appreciate that you think of us when you're doing this.
It is sweet.
It's funny because I've seen this from time to time. I'm recently back on Fountain. Still love Podverse, but back on Fountain just to see what they're up to. And I do bounce around. And Cast-O-Matic on the iPhone is pretty great. I made this comparison in LUP this week, and I think it is actually apt, as I feel very much like I used to do back in the Mandrake days of Linux, where I would try a desktop distro, and I'd love it, but then another desktop distro would solve a problem, and I'd be like, oh, look at this new config system they have or whatever. So I'd switch over to that distro for a while, and I'd be like, oh, but I'm really ready to try this new, I think it was just KDE4 or whatever, but I'm really ready to try this new desktop, and all right, I'll go try this distro for a while, and I would move around. But because it's all Linux, it's all open source, it's portable. It's doable.
It's your curiosity leapfrogging.
And it's just innovation at a rapid pace. And that's where these podcasting 2.0 apps.
It's an exciting time.
It is. It is really neat to see after essentially 18, 15 years of stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Bean comes in with 8,540 sats across 3 boosts. He says, gee, I wonder if there's a tool that allow you to transcribe all your episodes so that you could search the text for where the fighter jet story was told. Maybe you'd hear someone whispering about it on podcastindex.social.
Oh. This is a bit of a dig at our not being able to remember which episode or which show even that we had mentioned that story.
We're spazzes.
Yeah.
We are playing with Whisper. We don't have it all set up. There's so many projects. Makes me want to go to sleep. But yeah, you're right. We do need something that just auto-transcribes everything, puts it into a search, and then we just look for Brent's crazy fighter jet story. And even, wouldn't it be better if it was something that was like maybe a bit of a large language model on top of it so it could understand, so we could just say, hey, when did Brent share a fighter jet story?
It's crazy that 6 months ago we were talking about this, like integrating Whisper and all these other technologies into the website, and you just wait a little bit, and all of a sudden you've got even more possibility. We just need to get ourselves our butts off the sofa.
That's why we got to implement it, because the longer we wait, the more we can think of. Gene continues with the row of ducks. Maybe one day you can talk to Michael and crew about adding value for value revenue streams too.
Oh.
I don't think they see past the quote, it's crypto, to the real point that it's just a way for us to contribute directly and quickly and can be easily converted right back to dollars. Yeah, you're right. This is something I think people forget is that the sats are digital and you could so quickly convert them that if you just wanted to take the boost and cash them out, you could. We had a little fun last week when we didn't have office hours. We traveled out to a place to get some tacos, a little hole in the wall here near the studio that I wanted to take Brent to. And I decided that we would try as a bit of an experiment to take some of the sats that were boosted in on the node and buy the tacos with the sat tacos. And there's probably 1,000 ways to solve this, but man, did I not just have the easiest time doing this part. I have the Zeus wallet on Android, but it's also available for iOS. That'll connect directly to my node. It'll even manage some of the Lightning. It sees all the Lightning channels. It's really cool. And from the Zeus app, which was connected to my node over Tailscale, I sent I don't know what it was. It was $30 worth of sats. I sent those sats instantly over Lightning to the Cash App. Immediately shows up in the Cash App. It's so awesome. It just feels like magic. And then in the Cash App, it's like 1 or 2 taps to sell those sats. So I instantly then converted those sats to cash. And I have a Cash App debit card, which is they'll ship you a physical debit card, but it also will create a payment card in Apple Pay or Google Pay, whatever you might have. And so you have, if you go to a terminal that allows for wireless payment, you can pay with your phone. So in 15 seconds or so, or less, I sent the sats from my node over Lightning to the Cash App. Instantly sold the sats to cash. Went in with my phone and paid for the tacos using Apple Pay. And we bought sat tacos. And, you could argue, sure, you didn't pay with sats. And you're right, I didn't. If the terminal was updated with a new experimental firmware that supports Lightning payments, I could have. But I actually think one of the powerful things about a truly decentralized digital currency is that I can convert it instantly into any other currency. That's one of its powerful attributes. I could also go and get it in exchanged for something else, but I chose cash, right? But it could have been euros or could have been some sort of Canadian loony thing or whatever. Could have done that. And I chose USD. And I did it instantly, and I was able to load it on a debit card immediately because as soon as it's cash in the Cash App, it's on the debit card. And go do a phone payment and buy those dang tacos. It was awesome. And so I really feel like if you're not even open to the idea of boosts, you're kind of just leaving a great connection on the table. Because I was telling Brent last night as we were kind of pondering what to do in office hours that even if something went crazy and Bitcoin went to zero, and I literally cannot conceive of a scenario where that happens. Because I was going to say, even if Bitcoin had some major flaw and everybody panicked and it went to zero, they would patch that flaw, everybody would upgrade, and the price would skyrocket again, right? It's a peer-to-peer system. The only way to get rid of Bitcoin is to turn off the internet. It is literally that toothpaste is not going back in the tube. But let's just have a scenario where Bitcoin completely collapses and they just shut down the Bitcoin network. Turn this thing off. I wouldn't regret the boosts for a second.
That's a great metric.
It's that connection. It's those messages from the community.
Yeah, it's created this ecosystem of it's rightly named a boost because we feel a boost every time we read them and interact with them, and we get to talk about it right back. It's super fun.
And something we don't mention enough because it's just so transparent and automatic that we don't have to deal with it, but it's the splits. When you boost into this show, Brent gets a split.
Thank you.
I get a split. Drew gets a split. The network gets a split. All automatically, all transparently. It's listed right there in the RSS feed. You can go get a visual of it on the podcast index. No backroom deal of like, okay, well, this sponsor's going to pay this much on this show. You get this percentage, and the audience is no transparency to any of that, which is the norm. And with the boosts, it's transparent by default. I mean, sure, we could have some sort of backroom deal where 100% of the sats goes to the network and then we divvy them out. But why not take advantage of the native technology and make it obvious and transparent? There's no like confusion about it. It's so awesome. And the splits are going to be such a big deal. I think the time value lock splits that they talked about in the Podcasting 2.0 show, this last episode, where now when you're playing, once all the podcast clients update, a specific section of the podcast can have a split that goes like 80-90% to one person.
That's
so
so
say you want
fun.
to play a song, right? That split during that song goes to them. And then when the song ends, it's back to the regular set.
That's really what YouTube needs. Instead of just banning your video altogether because you played, I don't know, the Eagles or something, that is the solution. I can't believe they're not thinking of that a little bit more aggressively.
And that is also part of Gene's follow-up boost, is that it's that time value lock is becoming part of the spec.
You know, we did have a question in one of the Matrix rooms this week.
Oh, yeah?
And I think it's related to this topic. The question was, hey, as a listener, is there a way that I could see every boost that's been sent into JB to just kind of follow along at their own pace?
That's a good question. By function, in the Fountain app, yes. So if you use Fountain, you can go to the boost, and you should see the boost from all of the apps in Fountain now. There does seem to be a little more traction about cross-app lightning comments taking off. There's been a lot of discussion about which way to do standardized cross-app comments. Fountain kind of went all in on Lightning, and we're just going to use Lightning, and Lightning messages and comments in the app in there are Lightning-based, and it does seem to be working for them. So I think that success they're having is having some kind of effect on the rest of the Podcasting 2.0 community. So we may eventually see the boost show across all shows. Outside of that, I mean, conceivably, there would be a way to build a tool that could read the blockchain, of course.
Sure.
But outside of that, if you're not in the value split chain, I don't think so. I'm probably wrong, though. But not that I know of off the top of my head, other than the Fountain app. But if other apps implement the cross-app lightning comment stuff, then any app that has that. Because it is all out there. It is. Dasha comes in with 9,494 sats across 2 boosts. He loves seeing Michael on the show. He loves podcasting crossovers, as he says. And that he loves seeing people that are part of the JPU, the Jupiter Podcasting Universe.
Nice.
He says he says he would also be sad to see office hours go, but if it's draining or otherwise hurting lives or JB, it makes sense. Maybe a middle ground, it would be once a month or something like that, just so we can wean off, just an idea. He goes on to say, I can't remember if this was suggested before, but Drops of Jupiter could be a cool new name if you're still looking. Might have some SEO conflict there. He followed up to second Brandon's bits from last show. The work you put into getting quality sponsors is amazing. I'm a party member. One reoccurring statement that is legit makes me excited to see come through every month. Wow. That's really
That's something.
That's very sweet. But I frequently listen to the public feed just to hear your ad reads. Keep up the amazing work. I know it's long and hard. Thanks for doing what you do.
So wait. So Daja
is a member
for Jupiter to
but
party,
still gets the
but decides to listen to the ads because they appreciate the way you read the ads.
I don't think the sponsors would believe me if I told them
it's right there.
I know. I don't think they'd believe me, but the ads do perform well for them, so maybe they would.
Oh, that is really fun.
That is really nice. It's a nice thing to hear. Well, see, now aren't you glad we did the episode today?
Yeah.
See, I was trying to convince you, but Brent was grousing before the show. You could probably tell he's kind of a grouser and a complainer, so PegDoc comes in with 3,333 stats because we're moving right along. He says, just chatted with another listener who used Fountain and now doesn't seem to be able to withdraw sats from it because he's a new user. And you need to listen to a podcast on a daily basis for some amount of time before the withdrawal is unlocked. Yeah, I think that is probably to prevent bot spamming. Because if you're issuing out, think about it, this is a tricky problem. Because if you could conceivably, I would think, especially on Android, script something that would launch the app and hit the play button. And then play for a bit and just extract the sats. And if you just did that 10, 20 sats at a time, you'd eventually get somewhere. And this is a hard currency, so it's like every sat counts. So I wouldn't be surprised if Fountain is trying to do some kind of spam bot prevention where they verify you're a real human. Plus, it would take days of listening before you had any amount of sats worth withdrawing anyways. So I think that's probably part of their logic too. Don't forget though, because it is the Lightning Network, you could always just grab some sats anywhere, like the Cash App, Strike, whatever, and just send them to Fountain. And you don't have to worry about their whole earn thing. But he goes on to say, I get a bit of feeling that Fountain thinks like maybe they're building a closed ecosystem. And maybe they're thinking more about that than an open ecosystem that I see within Podcasting 2.0. I can understand the financial incentives, but Podverse and Alby show a better way. I kind of agree. I think Fountain has an incentive to build a real infrastructure around all this, provide out of the box boost support. And if you go, you can actually do a lot of they'll be your backend node, they'll be your wallet, they'll do all of that for you if you want. I think there's a place for that though. And because it's all open protocols, the market can remain competitive. I also prefer something GPL, and I prefer Alby because I can use it across different apps and sites and services. But that said, the Fountain team has done a really good job, and users like using it. And I think what we've seen is when our shows do well on their top charts, we get big numbers. Numbers come in.
Yeah, for sure.
So they're doing something right because it seems to have the draw.
We've recently moved me to Alby.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Why we did it?
Yeah. So we decided just kind of initially to set you up with your own node so that way we could play around with the self-hosting aspect of it.
This was like 8 months ago, more than that.
Yeah, maybe almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And it's been fine, really. Every now and then I've had to go in there and do there's a big security update, so I got to update your node. Or, the channels are out of whack again, but I need to rebalance them. That hasn't been a huge problem because you're getting a percentage of the split for the shows you're on. So it's not quite the same volume that the network node gets, where I do have to more actively manage the channel. So it really wasn't too bad, but every now and then it would happen. And we thought, if we moved you over to Alby, they're kind of managing the whole liquidity situation for you. Plus, they've built some tooling on top of that so you can view the boosts and stuff like that. Although I think Helipad's better, but I think Helipad's a lot better, but it's nice to have. And then you don't have to worry about the administration aspect of it. And we don't also then have users that get an error message like, oh, sorry, couldn't connect to that node or whatever might happen. And my node here, the JB node, the main node, already can generate that error occasionally because of Tor issues. And so when you combine if yours is out of liquidity and mine's having a Tor issue, it's just kind of a bad user experience. So moving it over to Alby lets them manage the liquidity. It gives you the tooling around Alby, which is nice. And then kind of the philosophy is you sweep to a wallet,
from time to time.
Because we're not talking huge sums of money here. So you just kind of keep an eye on it. And when it's that's a dollar amount I would hate to lose, then you sweep it. Or maybe you sweep before you get there, right? And I think that's a system that'll work pretty well. I don't know if I want to move the network node over there, but I think for co-hosts and hosts that don't have a self-hosted setup at home or are not really into this thing, I could see one day maybe Mike gets an Alby account, right? But I've never really suggested Mike from Coda Radio set up a node because it's just too much work. Why bother? Just go stack some sats and then you can sweep them out.
And so the way I understand it, this change applies to now and future episodes.
Yeah.
I would also imagine there's a way of doing it retroactively that would be a bit more difficult.
It should. No, it's done at the show RSS level, not the episode level.
All right.
So we do it across the shows, and it would just be a matter of cache. So when the user client re-pulls the feed, they'll get the new value block.
Great.
So I'd imagine a week.
Such a great system.
It is nice. Yeah. Dave Jones, the pod sage, comes in with 10,000 sats. He says a show from the backyard. Yes, please. We thought about it.
Yeah, this morning.
We thought about it, Dave. We really did. The problem is it's kind of loud here. I think what I said is we need to go to the woods.
I got a place.
Yeah?
I mean...
Your place?
We don't have internet, but you bring
the Starlink.
Bring your Starlink.
Well, that's what I was thinking is we should go to the woods not too far from here, bring the Starlink, set up outside, put the awning out, put the table out.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We got to do this.
We really should. We really should do an office hours from outside. It's pretty great. It's such a beautiful area up there. And the only thing you'd hear would be the birds, maybe a deer running through the yard. Chomp, chomp, chomp. They're stompers. So sometimes you hear that. Our last boost this week comes from Elijah, who sent in 1,500 sats. He says, did you guys know Podverse has a skip to preset time feature? Although I never use it. That might have been the app I was thinking of, actually. We're talking about how, the podcasts that just put all their ads at the beginning.
Yeah.
You can just set now in some of these podcast apps, a 5-minute skip ahead. Another note, do you know any good tools for generating podcasting 2.0 RSS feeds? I've been writing all my own scripts to generate them just to get familiar with the spec, but some pre-built tool might be useful. Respect.
Yeah, this is cool.
Nicely done, Elijah. If you haven't tried Sovereign Feeds, definitely give it a go, because I think Sovereign Feeds is a great example of here's all the things the spec is capable of, because Stephen B is really pretty good about as soon as the podcasting 2.0 guys cook up something, Stephen B's usually got it built into Sovereign Feeds. So I'll often use Sovereign Feeds as my example podcasting 2.0 feed. I'll go in there and it has a download XML feature, and I'll just download that sucker and look at what it's generating for me. On occasion, I've needed to tweak a few things, but for the most part, it's pretty solid. You could probably just publish what it gives you. It is a little bit of a wonky workflow in my opinion, but give it some time, work with it before you start using it in anger, and I think you'll be fine. All right, we have what? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it looks like Dan might just have done a live boost.
Oh, I need to check on that. Thank you. You're right. Well, thank you, Dan. Not only is Dan in the mumble room, but Dan sends in now our official baller boost, actually nearly doubling all of the sats that we have made for this entire episode. So thank you, Dan. Prior to Dan's boost, which I'm grateful for, we had made a total of 69,000 sats this episode. Little low, but times are tough, and I'm happy to get what we can get. Not great, but I'm happy. But then Dan comes in with 67,060 sats, saying keeping the show alive a little while longer. Yes, you are, sir. And I think that means we'll have an episode 30.
That's how it works. We don't know.
I think that's how it works this week. If we don't show up, you can assume there weren't enough boosts. Because this is honestly, this is the boost segment's turned the whole thing around for me. I'm in a way better mood now.
Great.
So, especially Dan's last minute live boost. Thanks, Dan. You're a legend. I appreciate it. All right. Well, if you'd like to send a boost into the show, you got a couple of paths ahead of you. Yeah, warrior. You can go get a new podcast app, podcastapps.com or newpodcastapps.com, and join the podcasting 2.0 revolution. Fountain, getting a lot of love these days. That's available for iOS or Android. Podverse, iOS, Android, or web, and it's GPL. It monetizes through a membership strategy. And then there's things like Cast-O-Matic, which are iOS only. All of that's newpodcastapps.com. You get it all listed over there. Oh, what's that? You want to keep your damn podcast app? Well, good news. Just get Alby. Get Alby, ALBY.com, and install that. Great. Top it off. You can either top it off with MoonPay directly inside Alby, or you can use something like the Cash App or Strike or some other app where you have sats. Send them into Alby, and then head over to the podcast index. Find office hours on there. I'll put a link in the notes. And you can boost in from the webpage. You don't got to change your dang podcast app. It's pretty slick. You can also just boost in from the Podverse webpage too, which is embedded at jupiterbroadcasting.com. It's like a lot of options. I noticed you didn't boost the episode, Brent, but that's fine. It's fine.
That's a short. Yeah.
If you boost it yourself, then you get a cut of your own boost.
That's like kind of a recursive circular logic going on.
Yeah, you better watch out. You might get Gary Gensler coming after you for that kind of thing.
How do you tax that?
Yeah, how do you account for that? It's a good question. Not a question we're going to answer today. I'll tell you that much. All right, show's over. Office is closing. Everybody's getting out. I got meat to cook. Probably see you next time, though. Thanks for making it.